from Abuja.
Hello, thank you for being a part of our show. We appreciate you. I'm Magnus Kpakol, and this is Magnus Kpakol GVA, Global Views Africa. As you know, it's all about how we can raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. In view today, gender balancing for economic development. Gender balance is extremely important for a faster pace of economic development in Africa. Today we talk with Dr. Mrs. Olubokola Dusumu, principal, founder, and proprietress of the prestigious Toddlers Haven and Junior Heights Elementary School in Gwagwalada in the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria. The issue? How gender balancing is imperative for economic development. But before that, we discuss David and Goliath economics in our Hidden Economics. How can this story help you in your day-to-day life? Now, up next, we bring you a quick discussion on public debt as a percent of GDP. That's coming right up. Government debt is typically a debt owed by a central government. Government debt is one method of financing government operations. Governments usually borrow by using securities such as government bonds and bills. As the government draws its income from much of the population, government debt is an indirect debt of the taxpayers. In this connection, which of the following countries is not among the top 5 in the world in public debt as a percent of GDP? Japan, Greece, Italy, and the United Kingdom. Which of the following countries is not among the top 5 in Africa in public debt as a percent of GDP? Zimbabwe, Sudan, Egypt, and Nigeria. Stay with us for our answers coming up shortly. Still in view, gender balance for economic development. But up next in our Hidden Economics, David and Goliath economics. In his book, David and Goliath, Malcolm Gladwell tells the story of how David, the son of Jesse, of the children of Israel, an underdog, easily wins the fight against the big and tall Philistine called Goliath. Malcolm Gladwell indeed has with this set up a new way of looking at underdogs. The Philistine army had gathered for war against Israel. The two armies faced each other, ready for battle on opposite sides of a steep valley. Goliath, the Philistine giant, measured over 9 feet tall and wore full armor. He came out each day for 40 days, mocking and challenging the Israelites to fight. Saul, the king of Israel, and his whole army were literally cowed and terrified by Goliath. One day, David, the youngest son of Jesse, was sent to the battle lines by his father to bring back news of his brothers. While there, David heard Goliath speaking pompous words against the children of Israel. He also saw the great fear that consumed the men of Israel. So David responded, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of God?" From here, the economics starts to unfold. Often people are described as underdogs because relative strengths of the combatants are not well known by observers and pundits. However, David knew that he was not really an underdog. That is why he shouted to Goliath that he was coming against him in the name of the Lord Almighty. David had confidence in his battle approach. The hidden economics is like this. David was efficient and used appropriate technology in the battle. He saw that Goliath was weighed down with too much armament. Goliath had his sword and his spears and his heavy armament that made him clumsy and a sitting duck. This was inappropriate war technology for the weapons that David had for the battle. Goliath's technology was inefficient and of low and indeed abysmal productivity against the weaponry of David. David used a missile in his slingshot. Goliath was waiting for David to come to him. But David had other ideas unknown to Goliath and even to the children of Israel. Economics is the study of choices and results. Goliath, upon seeing that David did not come to him, should have explored other choices, but he did not. In a surreal way, this scenario has a contemporary version in Saddam Hussein's forces waiting for the American army to come to them in the deserts of Iraq for the mother of all wars. Instead, the Americans used Tomahawk missiles fired from the sea to pulverize Saddam Hussein's defenses. The armies never met face to face. It shows the superiority of technology, skill, wisdom, and leadership. David's weaponry productivity was very high. Very little effort with a deadly impact. In the end, it all comes down to this. David had employed skill, appropriate technology, efficiency, and high productivity compared to Goliath. So sometimes what makes you an underdog can fool your dominant opponent to fail to explore any hidden superiority you may actually have. Everybody has his own Goliath. With the appropriate technology, passion, and commitment, you, the underdog, can actually win. Our hidden economics for you. Before we start our discussion in view, here are our quick view answers. The country not among the top 5 in the world in public debt as a percent of GDP is the United Kingdom, at number 19 in the world. The country not among the top 5 in Africa in the level of public debt as a percent of GDP is Nigeria, at number 33 in Africa and number 136 in the world. For more information on our show, see our contacts displayed on the screen. Can Africa continue to rise without mainstreaming gender issues and maintaining gender balance? We have with us Dr. Mrs. Olubukola Dusomu. Dr. Dusomu is principal, founder, and proprietress of the prestigious Toddlers Haven and Junior Heights Elementary School in Gwagwalada in the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria. She is a medical doctor by training and was the Federal Capital Territory chapter president of the National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools. Please join me in my discussion with Dr. Mrs. Dusomu. Well, thank you, ma'am, for being in our studios, our Magoni studios. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you.
Today we want to talk about gender balancing for economic growth and development. It was as far back as 1945 when the United Nations had their charter, looking for how to achieve equality between men and women. And since then, we've been working on the so-called gender mainstreaming and gender balancing. So in that regard, would you say that there is progress so far in bringing about this balancing between men and women, the so-called gender mainstreaming? Would you say that there is progress so far?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kpakol. I wouldn't say we're doing well in Africa. That's the honest truth. We're not doing well in Africa as a continent, and in Nigeria as a nation. Looking at the factors, the economic component of gender balance, gender empowerment, economic, the social, the political. Even if we have statistics that seems to paint a picture that we're doing very well, these statistics are clouded by a lot of issues. And the honest truth is, if you cannot pinpoint to say, okay, this is something that is doing well in terms of this policy, there's no point fooling ourselves. Take, for example, the issues we've had recently. We've had the political instability. That has always been a problem with Africa. Economic instability, a problem in Africa. Recently, the security issue is already overwhelming us, the security instability. And we seem to have dropped down back to the bottom of the ladder of Maslow's theory on survival of man. When we look at the education component, for example, the girl-child issue, look at the number of Nigerian children or the Nigerian girls or the African girls that are still out of school. We're trying, but we're not yet there. Last year, the National Economic Summit Group for Nigeria focused on education, particularly the girl-child education, and a lot of issues came up. If we're talking about gender balancing, if we're talking about gender empowerment, which obviously is the cornerstone of development of any nation, the girl-child education is important because that is the first, looking at the stages for gender empowerment, we have education followed by economy, and then it's at the tip that we have the political. What we try to use to measure our success is the number of women that are in the House of Assembly, the number of women in the Senate, the number of women ministers, women commissioners, women. Yes, those are successes. But what do these women up there, what do they translate to the foundation, as in terms of the girl child, the basis, the foundation of where we're starting from? Also, if you look at the unemployment rate, it's still not getting better. The processes for startups in Nigeria, it's crazy, it's ridiculous. The banks are not there to support. NGOs come with so many policies that some cannot even meet up in terms of criteria. And the skills gap is still as wide as ever. But more importantly, of concern, and we really need to begin to look at, is the current issue of the insurgency and security. Whatever gains we've made are being threatened. If you look at an IDP camp, and do a census of the population there. These women are there. And these women, just like we know that if you train a woman, you train a nation.
But is that because the men, is that because the men are killed?
Well, yes, the men are killed.
Isn't that then worse for men than for at least women are alive?
No. Well, okay. Maybe in the mindset of the terrorists, they believe that if the women are preserved, they'll preserve the society, maybe to an extent. But that's on a lighter note. Let's look at the issue on ground. The women are there. The children, they're the IDPs. So if we don't look at the issue of the political, the economic, most importantly, this security, this insurgency that is ravaging Africa, look at Nigeria in particular. All what we've gained is actually we're losing it gradually.
But doctor, let me bring you back just a little bit. We've said that since that 1945, or even the first women's conference was held in Mexico, I believe 1975, and then they went on to have these various women's conferences all the way to the so-called Beijing conference that provided the platform. You're saying that since that time, not much progress has been done or gained in Africa. But my question is, whose fault is it? Is it the fault of policy? Because policy has not been aimed to be sure that women are participating as maximally as men? Or is it cultural because the African society gives undue preferences to boys and to men? Or sociological against cultural, the same. But economic, is there something that is like a barrier for women, which we should have removed all this time, which we have not? Is that what it is? Actually, and what are these things?
It's actually multifactorial, honestly. All what you said exists, but at the top of the greatest hindrance to this are the policies and the political will to drive the policies, the political stability, the structure to drive these policies. And it is because there are successes, even at the home front, for example, at the cultural front. A lot of parents are now struggling for their children to go to school. There was a very touching remark that was made by one of the panelists at the last Economic Summit Group last year. He said an 8-year-old child was asked in northeastern Nigeria, why do you want to go to school? She said, I want to make sure that I go to school so that my husband will not beat me. That's a lot. That says a lot. So that means at the cultural level, at the home level, a lot is being done. But we need to do more. At the economic level, a lot is being done.
No, but really, it's a lot being done. I mean, let's be realistic. Is a lot really being done at the home level? I mean, for example, if a kid would say such a thing, I mean, my impression would be that maybe we need to do a lot more work. We need to do a lot more work at the home level.
But that child has actually seen a bailout out of the sufferings of the bondage, the impression a girl child have, or even a woman. Go to school, get to university, get a job, be a good mother, keep your home. She's seen beyond that even to survive in the home, I need to be educated. I need to go to school. So we've scored a point there. If an 8-year-old sees going to school as a way out of marital abuse, we're scoring a point. It's just that we're not achieving enough in terms of a stride.
So if a major barrier is cultural or sociological, that can be a little bit difficult, to go through society and try to get people to change their belief systems. Their ways of conducting their society to say, all right, now we got to make sure that we do more for women, or what? Should there be some sort of an affirmative action that is taken, let's say in Nigeria, at the local government level, where a local government chairman comes out and says, I'm going to give preferences to households that have children in school or something?
Still goes back to what? Policies. Still goes back to political will to drive the policy. Still goes back to absence of forces interfering the willpower of the local government chairman that comes up and says, this is what I want to do. This is the amount I'm voting for so and so households with girl children that are not doing this and not doing that. But we know that the uno factor in Nigeria is a problem. We know that transparency is still a problem. People that need these opportunities don't always get it. And that's why you see the home
front. But the opportunity is just go to school. Just the same way the boys are going to school. So if you have a household of 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls, if the 3 boys are in school, just also tell the 3 girls to go to school. Do you need policy for that?
It goes beyond opportunities. I know the point you're trying to make is the cultural and the political, the cultural level and the home level. But if you still trace this, it still goes back to the literacy level of the parents, the literacy level of the mother, the literacy level of the father. So it's a vicious cycle. If we don't get it at this point, if we correct it, we'll get it at the other point. So even if we want to change the cultural level, which is of concern to you, we still need to get them educated. A mother that is educated will make sure our girl child goes to school.
Therefore, we need to have policy aimed at educating the mothers.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to say is not that, I'm not saying we've not tried, but we could be better. That's the honest truth. As long as not all some of our girls, if we don't have 99% of our girls in school, then we're not the drive towards gender empowerment.
Should the Ministry of Women Affairs be called the Ministry of Gender Balancing? So that they will be looking at the grassroots, at the schools, to see what is happening in the schools, the right curriculum goes out.
You think maybe if the nomenclature changes, it's going to change anything?
Maybe it highlights the importance of what we're trying to achieve.
No, probably what they need to do is to have agencies that focus on that. We can't, because of that, now, change the face of the Ministry of Women Affairs. There are other things that pertain to women affairs, and we need to run our vision in our own country in line with other, the best practices in other parts of the world. But we can actually have agencies that government can set up agencies that can actually run the vision for gender empowerment. The honest truth is we will not develop anywhere in Nigeria if we don't do something about gender empowerment.
How many children should an average working woman have? in order to be normal?
When you're looking at number of children,
10?
What's the survival rates in the society? What's the survival rates? Take, for example, in China, they live as long as 100 years. It's the longevity that matters. In Nigeria, it's a taboo for somebody to have one child. The next thing that will come to your mind is if this child just develops diarrhea or malaria, anything can happen, the child can die. So that is why it's difficult in our own part of the world to restrict the number of children. But the honest truth is that...
But this is now a high-paying, high-tech madam in the office.
High-paying, high-tech madam is a Nigerian that has a cultural roots and has a cultural obligations. Maybe four. Maybe four.
On that note, I want to thank you so very much for being on our show.
Thank you very much, sir.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great job. African countries have always battled with the issue of tribal balance, although for long it seemed what the issue actually was ethnic supremacy. That is, let my people dominate. But as that continued, the tribes that got dominated began to fight back, often making it very difficult for the dominant tribe. Thankfully, that era seems to be fading into the rear view. More and more across Africa, people are paying more attention to ethnic political balance to help address possible or related geo-economic imbalances, or even national political and economic turmoil. Clearly, ethnic harmony has been a significant factor in minimizing the occurrence of economic turmoil in many countries, with Ghana and Tanzania being notable examples. It has also helped to promote steady and strong economic growth, as we have seen recently in Rwanda and even Nigeria. In Nigeria, the governments, federal and state, have requirements for ethnic representation in key political positions. And it will be a good thing if these representations are efficiently, competitively, and judiciously chosen for the sake of achieving optimal economic progress. So since there are still clear disparities between men and women in the workplace and in society, especially in Africa and other developing regions, something must be done about it, because it is consequential on economic development. If ethnic or tribal balancing is crucial for economic growth and development, then gender balancing has to be even more crucial. The founding United Nations Charter of 1945 included a provision for equality between men and women. Subsequently, from 1945 to 1975, various female officials within the United Nations and leaders of women's movements on the global stage attempted to turn these principles into action. As a result, the first World Conference on Women was held in Mexico, indeed Mexico City, in 1975. It resulted in the Declaration of Mexico on the Equality of Women and their contribution to development and peace. Since then, United Nations conferences have held in Copenhagen, Nairobi, and Beijing, where the so-called Beijing Platform for Action was developed. The Platform for Action is an agenda for women's empowerment. It aims at accelerating the implementation of the Nairobi forward-looking strategies for the advancement of women and at removing all the obstacles to women's active participation in all spheres of public and private life through a full and equal share in economic, social, cultural, and political decision-making. I believe we urgently need this principle of balancing shared power and responsibility to be established between women and men at home, in our communities, and in our national lives if we want a speedier pace of economic growth and development with a high quality of life for all. I'm Magnus Kpakol, and that's my view.
Magnus.